Thanks for tuning back into the CIO Lifeline. Today we're going to cover EOS, and that's the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and how it helps businesses get unstuck and helps entrepreneurs and owners achieve their goals and also improve the lives of the employees around them. Today we have Charlton Keultjes. He's an EOS implementer. Stick around. Charlton, thanks for joining us this morning. How are we doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
How long have you been an EOS implementer?
I've been an implementer just over a year. However, I also implemented as CEO of a privately held business for about 2 years, and then dabbled it with another company, kind of self-implementing.
So for our viewers, maybe give us a summary about EOS, and I'd like to understand what drew you in.
Yeah, so EOS is a simple set of practical tools, really timeless concepts, things that have been around for really a long time. It's a system, though, that we work with our clients to get vision, traction, and healthy. So what that means is vision is getting everyone 100% on the same page with where they're going, how you plan to get there. Traction's instilling discipline, focus, and accountability. So everywhere you go, you see people executing on that vision. And then healthy is creating a cohesive, open, honest, a fun-loving team, right? People that want to be surrounded by each other. So we do that with the leadership team. When I work with my clients, I'm working with the leadership team. What we find is, as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the company. All right. So ultimately, you get to the point where, if I'm working with a client of 150 employees, all 150 people, they know where you're going, how you plan to get there. They're executing on that vision day in and day out, week in and week out, with tools, discipline, accountability, and then they're all right. They're the right people. They're healthy. They're a cohesive, open, honest group. They're people that want to be surrounded by each other. Right? They want to go into the office. So that just gets everybody rowing in the same direction. Really, the stars align. You can accomplish so much more.
So then I think about the hamster wheel effect. So you say the words, it makes a lot of sense, but in execution is where I think companies do struggle. So how do you begin to get an organization on that same page? Like, what's the starting process? You mentioned a leadership team. It starts from the top. But
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. That hamster wheel, I think, is what everybody feels that's working in an organization. I just need 2 months to work 70 hours a week, and then I'm going to get out of this. And you never get out, right? That's the hamster wheel. You never actually make progress. You're dealing with the same stuff over and over, doing a lot of work, great work. It's just you're dealing with the same stuff over and over, and you never actually get to move on.
So, Charlton, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that hamster wheel idea. And I think that a lot of well-meaning, and I know you have to run into this, so they understand, mission, vision, values, right? But they haven't quite figured out a method or a system to help them start to execute against that in measurable ways that are reasonable. The phrase that one of my friends always said is, soon is not a time and some is not a number, right? And I find that, EOS really helps us take the emotion out of setting up those specific times and our expected outcomes. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to Tony's question as well. How do you get them actually going? And I think that's the question, is how do you actually do these things that everybody wants to do? Right? It's like every business book, every self-help book that I've ever read, I get to the end of it and I don't think, wow, I can't understand why this would ever be successful. Right? It's usually like, well, duh, but am I doing it? No, right? And so how do you actually get to do it? And part of that is that it's really hard to hold ourselves accountable. So having someone like me, an EOS implementer, somebody coming in to actually hold you accountable and walk you through the process, is part of it, right? So you just have to commit once. You commit to doing it, and then I hold you accountable the rest of the way. Yeah, this is actually reminding me of a story that Simon Sinek often talks about. Two guys cutting wood, and this is for their job, right? So every day they come to the same spot, they're cutting wood. They start at the same time, they end at the same time. But one of the guys, every day in the middle of the day, he leaves for an hour, and then he comes back. And at the end of every day, he ends up having cut more wood than the other guy. So after a couple months, the guy who doesn't leave ends up asking the guy who leaves every day, what in the world are you doing? You go leave for an hour. What are you doing? Because you end up cutting more wood than me every day. And the guy who leaves says, I go sharpen my axe. And so the point is, as it relates to this, is that that's exactly what this is with EOS, is that people don't want to leave, right, for a whole day. Because Tony, to your question, how do we actually start? It's with a full day offsite. And so all of our meetings are full day offsites, which is 5 times a year. There's so many companies that I talk to, leadership teams, that say, wow, we couldn't even get 90 minutes scheduled together. How are we going to be offsite for a full day? Well, if you don't go sharpen that axe, you end up cutting less wood.
That's a great analogy, because I sit in my current role, I sit and stare at a backdrop at my desk, and there's laminated cards pegged to the board on mission, vision, values. And I remember the half day exercise when all the folks got together and brainstormed and we came up with these. And there hasn't been a workshop since then. There hasn't been a reinforcement of it. It's just paper. And then the inertia of the day, and you can come up with 1,000 reasons why you can go astray or try to justify it. But you kind of answered the next question I had, and that was, so they bring in someone like yourself to kickstart this exercise and bring EOS into an organization. But this isn't a one and done engagement. This is multiple times a year. You mentioned 5. Do you see this going years 2, year 3? Like, how sticky is this for companies that want to adopt it?
I got hired as a fractional CIO to a client, third generation. They were using some old OKR system, wasn't getting anywhere. It's just a management meeting of nothing, right? I mean, it was more status updates, but no ball was getting pushed down the field. They brought me in to clean up IT, rebuild the foundation, cloud, all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, there's not even executive alignment here and alignment on priorities. And so after we got some of the IT foundational stuff, I just had a heart to heart with CEO and said, hey, we need a real system here for alignment, and this management group isn't moving. So we brought Charlton in, and we had the 90-minute, and this is where you could take it, Charlton. But man, fast forward to now, the healthy, transparent accountability meetings that we're having with getting things done, a lot of companies out there that are experiencing that today.
They're all different, right? Because every organization has different problems, different strengths. They started at a different point. What it's done is it's shined a light on the issues. And that's what this does. Like, you can't escape what the real issues are when you're going through this. Because when we go through building out your vision, which is what we do in our first 3 full days together, we're teaching the bulk of the tools, and then we're going through your vision. And when you do that, we're getting to the root of everything. And so it's always exposed. There are multiple clients that I've worked with in that process that, we have tears that end up coming out, because you can't hide, whether it's passion, whether it's issues between employees, it all ends up coming out.
Who's the audience in the room?
Let's call it the CEO, and then the leaders of each functional area. Most structured companies, you know who that is, right? It's your head of sales, whether it's a VP of sales, your CFO, your head of ops.
IT,
yep. It could, and HR, right?
Well, I was just going to say in HR, because the people are key.
Yeah.
As you were talking, Charlton, I really, yeah, I don't want to turn into a Simon Sinek, devotional here, but he also tells the story about the cathedral, right? Isn't that Simon's story where the two guys are building the cathedral and one guy's just laboring and beat down and can't really get motivated. And the other guy comes in and he's cheerful and they're moving the same rocks. And they're never going to finish this cathedral in their lifetime. They will never finish it. But the one guy's cheerful. And they said, well, what? We move these rocks all day. How can you be cheerful? And he said, I'm not moving rocks. I'm building a cathedral for my grandchildren, right? That's the vision piece. You got to get people excited about what their role does to move the organization forward. And then they accept the accountability. The minute you start talking about accountable, about 2/3 of a room freaks out. Accountable for what? What am I not doing? I thought I was doing a good job, right? How do you overcome that initial anxiety?
In EOS, we have something called LMA, which is leadership, management, and accountability. And this is a role that everyone has if they have people below them. And the way we describe that is it's L, which is leadership activities, plus M, management activities, equals accountability. Right? So you can't hold somebody accountable really. You do those things and they become accountable, like you said. Right? So because can you really force them? Well, maybe you feel like you can, but that doesn't really work.
I think vulnerability comes into play here. And Craig, you do a great job talking about this in many episodes. And that is, if you're not vulnerable, if you don't have that trust around the room, like Tom, when you mentioned your comment on when you talk about accountability, 2/3 of the room freaks out. That tells you that that vulnerability and trust hasn't been built yet, at least not in that room for this exercise. Maybe not initially, but that's where you want to get to.
And it's weird. You would think everybody's really trusting of each other initially. Man, you go to a whole nother level. I mean, it's a year with this one mutual client, and we're just at a point where we're like, I don't think you're right. Or we're not talking about the root thing, or your attitude isn't right. You can't put all this on HR. It's the executive team, AKA us, that have to drive this. People try to pass bucks too when it should be us and hold each other accountable, man. And that when you get that level of trust, you start really getting some momentum.
Yeah. So the company that I ran and implemented EOS was a family business, not my own. I was an outsider running that, and so we had to deal with family issues and ownership transfer and non-owner families being in the business. It is really complicated.
It's hard. My first 18 years of my career was in a family business, and you tend to get sheep in the room when because now maybe I'm being cynical now, but unless you have a drop of that family blood, you will plateau quick, and then who's going to disparage or openly refute in a room against said family members? So those are, man, that can be a tough hill to climb.
Well, and even like when you get to that trust factor with family, and I just had to do it, and it's weird as weird can be. It's like the one person owner now, I mean, third generation owner, like you can't go around telling people that you're an owner. You got to earn that right. You got to earn leadership. You got to earn that role, because no one, if you go beating your chest, no one respects that. And respect, we're starting to embrace core values because it's part of the EOS journey, really understanding your core values, but living them.
And I've said this for years, but people cannot get emotionally connected to a number. Nobody's going to get excited about making Craig Schroeder another $500,000. They don't care. What they get excited about, what they can get connected to, is something that they feel, right? What's the mission where I work? We want to make the world a better place. And I'm not going to take you through all of that, but I'm telling you, you could say it sounds corny. For us, it's real. And we're all connected to it. And so you got to find that emotional connection as your foundation. That's your vision. Where are we trying to go as a company? And that's not a number.
Yeah. Well, so it's like what you said about the cathedral, right? It's building something that's much, much bigger and longer. I mean, it's, again, we're going to turn into Simon Sinek podcast here. It's the infinite game, though.
You better know
It's
your
the
why,
infinite
then.
game. It's not the finite that you're gonna, you win at a certain point in time. It's the longer thing, right? The number is the thing that you get to, and then what? And so your point's good.
Just in the interest of helping our listeners that might want to try to take a next step, can you walk us through the process? Like if you were interested in starting this journey, give them a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. So step one would be you would meet with an EOS implementer like me for 90 minutes. So that's a free meeting that we show you what it would look like implementing EOS. So what are the tools? We kind of go high level on what are all the tools, what feel like. You can see yourself in it then. And most of my clients, they sign up in that meeting. If they don't, they're probably not willing to commit. They know they should have it. Back to the beginning here, it's just going and actually doing it. There's so many people, so many companies that say, yeah, we absolutely need this, but oh man, we'd really have to commit. Well,
Yeah.
right, you're the one that would have to do that. And so this is
right.
that feeling of not having control of your life, of the company. Yeah, you would have to commit. That's this team that would decide that. You have that meeting, you decide to move forward. We schedule your first full 3 days. So after that, every meeting we have is a full day offsite. And so that ends up being 3 sessions within 60 days. So we have the first one, 30 days later, we have number 2, 30 days after that, number 3. And then we move into this quarterly cadence. We meet quarterly. That's 1 day offsite. And then during your annual planning, it's 2 days offsite.
So what are the components within these meetings? Does it bucket down neatly into 3 categories? Like what's kind of the structure when you're in the room?
Good question. The first 3 are different than when we get into our quarterly cadence. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, the first session is really teaching you the tools. We do this a little differently than you would expect. We teach you all these tools when you don't even know what your vision is. Right? So we haven't determined where you're going because we want to make sure that once you have that vision set, you actually have the tools in place to execute on it.
I love the tools first approach. And, many people say tools for guardrails, but in EOS, I like to think of the tools as handrails, right? They're helping us move up, right? It gives you something to hold on to make that next step.
Yeah, the handrail brings comfort, and you know that if you just keep holding on to it, you're going to keep going. I like that. I'm going to steal that one from you.
No charge.
Yeah.
Just sign here, Charlton.
TM. So we teach these tools. We get structure in place. We get a scorecard. We set your priorities. Step 1, and then we build out your vision. Which vision is? This is the VTO in EOS, Vision Traction Organizer. It's just a 2-page document. We don't create a 200-page strategic plan. It's just a 2-page document, right? Simplified version, like everything in EOS. Those following 2 days, right? The second and third full day, we're building out your core values, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, rocks, and then finalizing your issues list. So then, right after 3 days, we've got tools that are being used by the leadership team. We've got vision that's now in place. And so that's great. We all know it at the leadership team level, but remember earlier I said 100% of the people know this. So we have to go tell them, right? This is that communication. So you start to roll these tools out. You also start to just communicate this stuff, and then it starts to cascade down.
So for companies that say, well, we have a vision, we have our values, but they still want to implement EOS. Do they find that changing, or are you building around what they have?
Everybody's done something, right? Everybody's done goals. Everybody's done some vision work, some core value work. So everybody comes into this at a different spot. And so sometimes we go through a company's core values and they come out the other end with the same ones, but they've been validated now through a process, and there's been a team that's done it together.
Craig winced the first time he heard us use this, but well, we have our mission, we have our values, we have our. Well, then why'd you call me? We're gonna get real, and we're gonna get vulnerable. Something hurt. You don't like your situation, and so because if everything's rosy, I can go get lunch somewhere else, right? You called for a reason. Something doesn't feel right. Maybe it's just in your gut, like you said, Charlton. Something doesn't feel like we're making progress.
And with the inertia of the day, I like when you said, you talk about your 3-year. I think you mentioned even like a 10-year, and it helps. Maybe comment a little bit about that, because your companies they're focused on what we're going to achieve this year, and maybe that 3-year and even 10-year. So the purposes for both, what that helps drive, how does that fit in?
Yeah, so we're usually focused on what we're achieving this year, but how do we know what we should achieve? Right? How do we know where we're going? So that 10-year, that is, where are you going long term? Right? Are we going to, if we leave here from Indiana, are we going to Texas or Florida? Right? Either way, we're getting in the car, we're driving, we're making turns, we're making stops, but we might end up in two completely different places doing the same thing.
Your Amazon rainforest analogy. Give us that. Come on.
Yeah. So you can have, if you're cutting a road through the Amazon, you can have the best cutters of wood in the world. Right, chopping down trees. But if somebody's not climbing up the trees, right, this is leadership, and seeing where you're going, you're going to be cutting in a zigzag. So it's just inefficient. That's the hamster wheel, is that you're doing great work. You're just not getting there as fast because you don't know where you're going. So 10 years is really that. Where are we going long term? And you don't have to know how to get there. 3 years that's just creating a vision. Now, this is the visualization. Just seeing in your mind's eye, what do I think this organization is going to look like? What does it need to look like if we're going to hit that 10-year target? Right? So we can start to see, right? I like to think about this from a personal perspective too. If I'm where I want to be in 3 years, when I wake up in the morning, what am I thinking about? Right? When I go into the office, who am I talking to? What am I working on? And start to think about that. So this is like from the company's perspective. What does it look like? Well, we have 8 people on the leadership team in 3 years. We only have 5 now. Ooh, we have an IT department of 8 instead of 3. Ooh, well, if that's in 3 years, 1 year, there's some things we probably need to get going on in 1 year, right? So we just build that backwards. It gets built backwards to know what we need to do today. So how do we know what we need to do today if we don't know where we're going long term? So that's 10 years, right? We create the picture in our mind so we can see it in 3. We then say, what are our 3 to 7 goals for this year? Not 3 to 7, not 23 for this year. Because if we have 23, we're going to get 0 done. If we have 3, we're going to get 3 done. I like 3 better than 0.
Well said.
Then we've got our 1 year set. So you asked me 10, 3, and 1, but really where this goes is we've got our 1 year set. And then we say, and then this 90 days, what are the 3 to 7 most important things that we need to get done this 90 days to make sure that we are laying the groundwork for 1 year to get those 1 year goals done? Because that 1 year lays the groundwork for 3, that lays the groundwork for 5, 7, 10. So, right, I said you might not know how you're going to get to that 10 year. You don't need to, right? You just take 90 days at a time.
You mentioned the rocks. Can you explain a little bit what the rocks are and how you manage those?
Yeah, so rocks are your quarterly priorities. Right? What are the most important things that the company needs to get done, and then what you need to get done every quarter?
Yeah, and the rocks are working on the business, right? A lot of people try to pick easy ones, but it's like, no, those are pebbles. You got to pick the big ones, right? And that are going to move the needle. People say, well, we're just going to knock out these 10 easy ones, but they're not the most important, right? And we all fall into that trap at sometimes. You got to call each other out, but And the other big point that Charlton kind of alluded to was the people side. One of the tools is right people, right seat. Sometimes they're great people, they're just in the wrong seat. And these tools help you identify that. Sometimes it's just the wrong person for the company. And we've seen people opt out. They're like, hey, this is going to be a level of accountability, and I don't have that skill set. And I'm just going to be honest, because it's going to become apparent anyway. So those are other hard conversations. But what are you going to do? Fake it for 10 years and not help anybody, be miserable? It just brings a fulfillment factor to life as a person also. And that's where healthy teams start happening.
Yeah, and someone to call you out too, right? If you haven't had that moment of awareness, and if you're faking it, you want someone to call you out. I mean, that's part of that healthy.
But the toughest part, and once you get through this piece, I think it gets a lot easier. And now I'm going to mess up which author I'm talking about. This might be holacracy, but get it, want it capabilities, right? Like, first, get it, meaning, are they aligned with the vision, right? Do they fit our culture? Because if they don't fit our culture, they probably got to go. And then, do they want it? Are they going to go? And then, are they capable of doing the job? And that's tough the first time, but it takes a lot of pressure off HR, which, if we're all honest, and some of these mid-sized companies, there is no HR. It's probably part of the CFO's job.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just
yeah. So is IT.
Poke the bear, Tom.
Yeah.
As CIOs, we're influencing culture more than we ever have in history, right? We're talking with executives. We're in executive team meetings, and we're helping implement systems. And we see the people that are in the wrong seats because we know the adoption's not happening. So we have more influence than ever. And this isn't like a beat your chest IT thing, but it's technology is changing priorities and business strategy priorities. And we need, why this is on the CIO Lifeline is because it's real. I mean, we see all the way from the bottom all the way to the top, and we should be interacting with the executive teams at a high level and helping guide the ship a lot more, right? And because it's data, it's new AI, how's this adoption going to work? Because it's going to expose the bad people faster. It's going to help the good people go farther, and we're enablers now. And we really, really need to be aligned and make sure the priorities are set right and be part of the successes.
You mentioned issues too. Now tune in for our next episode when we have Tanya Bankston talking about IDSing and as a component of this larger EOS topic. Really great episode breaking down what do you do with your issues? How do you park them? How do you tackle them?
Some of that is that just the way that we work and the way our brains work. We want to tell stories, but we feel like we have to give a bunch of context. Usually we don't. So IDS just helps you cut through, really find what the actual problem is and then solve it as fast as possible.
Being on the inside, Tony, it's pretty cool because I've gone through a lot of IDSing. It's uncomfortable at first, but great companies process and solve issues really well. And they adopt this because otherwise you're just circling around it, burning time, and you're not getting things done.
I love the simplicity in all this because I would think anybody who watches us go, well, yeah, you said it earlier, Charlton. You're like, duh,
Yeah.
But executing, that's a whole other animal. But once you embrace it and you get that cadence and that discipline, that simplicity turns into something so powerful. I just, great topic. Thanks for being here today.
And maybe bring that all the way back to the discussion about how do you get started on this, and it takes the team deciding to do it. I think there are often times that there are a whole team of that are maybe not the owner or the CEO that are thinking to themselves, we absolutely need this, but I don't think I can't say that in this room. right? I can't be the one to call that out. And so then they say, well, we'd all have to decide to do that, and we'd have to commit. And then the CEO just goes along with that rather than putting their fist down and saying, I'm going to create a company that allows you guys to be offsite a day. I'm going to create a company that's going to make your lives better. Right? I think that's sometimes they need that. They need the leader to stand up and say, no, like, I'm going to put myself on the line for this.
Well, and if you ask questions and they answer honestly, if as an organization, and I've been guilty until we tried to clean this up, if you look at the amount of time that is wasted every day running down fires in the absence of a tool, the half day, the offsites and the 90-minute meetings and the yearly plan, it's a fraction of that time, and it's going to clean it all up for them. Not every fire, right? You're going to have fires, but you're not going to waste time because you're going to have clarity about how we resolve issues and what we do next.
Yeah, you're not going to spend 4 hours talking about how are we going to get another picnic table outside, or how are we going to decide who's sorting the mail.
Well, that's
right?
important, though. Don't discount that.
What about the Christmas party?
No, but I'm not going to politic it down the hall. I'm not going to talk to Charlton, and then I'm not going to, I'm not going to go down the hall 40 feet and then talk to Craig, and then go down the hall
$5,000 an hour. I'll figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're just anyway. In the absence of a system, a lot of time is wasted. That's all I was saying.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure. For our listeners that might be asking, why is CIO Lifeline, talking about these systems? A lot of the times when a CIO is trying to influence an organization, it's the lack of systems that and I mean management systems, not IT systems, right? We need a management system that helps us have clarity around our vision so that we can build that underlying infrastructure. If we don't have clarity on our mission, vision, values, and how we intend to get wherever we're going in the next 1, 3, 5 years, then the software and the IT stuff is just flailing around. And then you get into issues where CEOs and CFOs get frustrated because Tony wants a new shiny tool and they can't figure out why that makes a difference.
Good stuff. So if you're feeling stuck in your organization and you need help breaking through and having that vision be sticky, getting your employees on board, having those healthy conversations around the table, you should consider EOS, because the benefits that come out of this are tremendous. In fact, it's hard to measure them, how powerful this can be for an organization. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to catch next episode when we dig into IDS. Charlton, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See you, everybody.
I'm blurry to you guys.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Craig,
Yep,
you look like
that's
shit. No, I'm kidding. And you hid the maid's corpse in the bathroom, Tom. Check. Good.
He's frozen.
Oh, wait. Yeah, he froze. That was
That's a scary look.
that was a reaction like busted, Would you call this a tool?
Call it a management cult of indoctrination.
System. It's a
System. The system.
System. Today's guest is, now how do you say your last name?
Keultjes.
Keultjes. Our guest today is Charlton Keultjes. Did I say that right?
Keultjes.
Keultjes. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to catch next. And be sure to.
That's a tough stutter you got there, Tom.
It is, yeah.
Because there's one thing to know it. There's another thing to be in the room and just say, it's this. You got to do it. Go do it. I can't believe, there's no reason why you shouldn't. Well, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so you have to have the finesse, which I think is the benefit of having you guys.
Charlton, I'm going to do a quick intro. If I call you Kevin, I apologize. guy I've known for 30 years is Kevin Charlton. So
Oh, wow.
I'm going to apologize right now.
A few moments later.
Kevin, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
It's Charlton,
did
but
it.
hey,
I
You
did
did
it.
Kevin, we're
Oh my God. All right.
It took me a second. I was like, wait, no, that's Tom.
Right.
Oh, yeah, this is Kevin. I forgot. I can't believe you did it.
I couldn't believe it either. I
Oh
thought
my
he was
God.
joking, Charlton.
right out of the seat.
You know, we already have outtakes.
I know. I'm like, I thought he froze. All right.
Let it go.